Unit 1, 4 Cradles of Civilization. It all starts in 4 places where conditions were just right for a bunch of people to go, yeah sure, this place is pretty cool, I'll hang around here. The ancient civilizations of Indus, China, Sumer, and Egypt were an alright place to stay, as long as you aren't a woman and you don't care about free speech and giving all your stuff away to a king. Overall, not bad considering your alternatives are living alone and getting eaten by wolves, probably. They were pretty boring overall, most people farmed, and there was some basic writing and laws. There was some religion too, which leads us to Unit 2. Hinduism and Buddhism. They have some similarities, as Buddhism was founded out of Hinduism. Hinduism has no noted founder, and just pretty much became a thing. It had a detailed caste system in which your job was your parents, and you married someone with the same job as you. The idea was that you did a good job at your life and then you might get moved up to something better in your next life. The ultimate goal was to reach the top and unite with everything and the main god. This idea of an endless birth-life-death cycle was reflected in their major gods of the creator, preserver, destroyer, and their symbol, which was the wheel. No, not that wheel. For the exam, you should probably know the difference between 3 terms, Brahma, Braham, and Brahman. Brahma was the creator god, Braham was the major god and union of everything, and Brahman was the name for priests. Finally to Buddhism, this guy named Siddhartha Gautama saw that a lot of people were suffering, so he made a new religion. Just kidding, it wasn't that simple. Instead, he meditated for a week and came up with 4 noble truths, which basically amount to stop wanting stuff, physical or not, it's making you suffer. Also, follow this path, that we never learned about so we don't have to answer anything on the exam. Tons of people joined him and he made a religion. Too long didn't listen, Braham, Brahma, Brahman. Unit 3, Fall of Rome/Rise of Christianity. Rome had its own religion which you probably know about from the Percy Jackson books, but again, not on the test. Rome was doing well because they conquered people but only really had 2 rules. 1, respect our king, and 2, you don't have to be in our religion but you gotta acknowledge it. These rules were pretty easy to follow, leading to most of the places Rome invaded liking them a good bit and not revolted. This caused Rome to get pretty big and rich. Good for them. This all started to change, though, when a few things happened. 1, money was a bit tight, as they were constantly being attacked from everywhere by tribes, including the Huns. 2, as Rome got larger and larger, the general pride in being Roman kinda fell. People felt less inclined to war and die for a country they only kinda liked. 7. 8/10. 3, this dude named Jesus Christ. Wait, sorry. Jesus Christ. Who wrote this script? Anyways, he started a religion and a lot of people liked it. Unfortunately, the people who practiced it didn't really like the whole acknowledging the Roman gods thing, so they got into a lot of trouble. Unfortunately, the more the Romans executed, the more the Christians seemed to rise up, causing constant fighting. The Roman Empire tried to fix these things by cutting the empire into 2 parts and governing them as such. Unfortunately, this only compounded the problem as the East got richer than the West, and this caused more problems. Basically, the East ended up changing its name and becoming a Christian empire, finally caving into those non-stop fighting Christians. The West just died away, broke apart, and became not Rome. Into the next unit, Unit 4, Byzantine/Russia/Eastern Europe. Hey, remember the Eastern Roman Empire? It became this place called Byzantine. They were pretty rich too, thanks to this pretty cool guy named Constantine. He was liking to make a city and he did just that, naming it Constantinople, real humble dude. This city was very well placed, being right on the only strip of water connecting the Black and Aegean seas. This was a big route of trade and Constantine set up a barrier along that strip of water, basically giving them a hold on the trade route. They taxed anyone who tried to cross through, and if they refused to pay, Constantinople's army sunk them and then stole everything anyway. With this, they got tons of money and set up one of the strongest armies in the world. Also, because they were on a peninsula and had set up giant strong walls, there was pretty much no way to attack them. By the time all this was done, Constantine was dead and this new dude called Justinian was ruling. He was a great strategist at war and wanted to reclaim all the land that was lost when the Western Rome fell. He got pretty close, but the Ottoman Turks, who had been trying to take over Byzantine for a long time, finally invented this thing called the cannon, which rendered the strong walls of Constantinople useless. Bye-bye, Byzantine. Now, to Russia. This all starts with a bunch of people who had land and could not get it organized for the life of them. So naturally, like all sane folks, they went to the Vikings to get a government. This dude called Rook shows up from a clan called the Kievan Rus, remember that, and sets up a capital and a monarchy. He names the capital Kiev and the people there start to call themselves Russians, both of those names from the tribe. They were doing very well for themselves, with a ton of people and money coming across from Byzantine into Russia. Unfortunately, this changed because this group called the Mongols came from China and threatened to invade if not paid. They continued to do this for a long time, sucking the money away until about 1380 when the Russians revolted, took back over, and drove the Mongols out. They moved their capital to Moscow, where it became a huge center of trade. Then follows a long reign of dictators controlling Russia, cutting it off from the rest of the world, and hoarding the money to the top. Some brought growth and peace to the country, some brought death and madness, but overall it just wasn't good. Unit 5, Islam. Now we move back in time a little and change our location to Saudi Arabia. Being the second largest religion in the world, Islam was founded by Muhammad when he got a message from the angel Gabriel. His job was to listen to Gabriel's messages and spread his own revelations throughout the land. He wrote a book called the Quran, which was all the stuff in the Bible but Gabriel and his story added onto it. The Quran, however, has a little different take on a few things, such as Abraham, Jesus, Moses, and Muhammad all being prophets of God but Muhammad being the final and most right one. Those in the Islamic faith are encouraged to be kind to other people of the book, meaning Christians and Jews who still believe in the same basic premise with a few differences. It also sets up the 5 pillars of faith that I have a strange feeling will be on the exam: declaration of faith, daily prayer, alms to the poor, charity, fasting during Ramadan, a holiday, and the Hajj, a journey to Mecca where Islam was founded for all who are able to. This pretty much wraps up our unit on it, but like every religion, it is much more than we could cover in this video. Unit 6, Middle Ages. After the fall of Rome, everybody was just kind of there, not sure what to do with themselves. Eventually small kingdoms formed under a system called feudalism. This involved a lord over an area renting out land for people, known as vassals, to live and farm on as long as they paid some of the farm stuff upwards to the lords. This was a good system because it kept people alive. Unfortunately those at the bottom were treated pretty horribly, and as kings got greedier and started demanding more and more from them, conditions got worse. Having everyone know someone something kept people honest and doing well. Unfortunately they had a lot more problems than government. Fiercely, France and England were fighting for 100 years and there, meaning lots of lives and money lost. The French won, but really it was bad on both sides. Second, the English really wanted to take back Jerusalem, the holy city, for them because Jesus was crucified and buried there. However, the Muslims also wanted it because Muhammad visited it. The English sent people there to take it over and basically lost a ton of times and won once. It ended with 2 mostly dead armies and a concerning amount of children missing. Finally, medieval times were not good by any standards when it came to hygiene, meaning diseases ran rampant. The most deadly of which was called Black Death, or the bubonic plague. People had no clue how it was happening and dropped like flies. It was more contagious than anything they had seen, and with their weakened immune systems from famine and lack of hygiene, whole towns vanished. This strengthened people's belief in the church. This led to the church having a bit of a chokehold over every kingdom, as the church could excommunicate a kingdom if the king did something they didn't like. If the kingdom was excommunicated, everyone was sure to revolt and or leave, because without the church, they couldn't attend mass or have their last rites read to them, meaning they were going to go to hell. This was a lot of power in one place and would cause some problems soon. Unit 7, Renaissance. With a lot of people dead, the many kingdoms kind of mushed into countries, and a very rich church, things started to turn around for people. The church started funding the arts, education, and inventions. Although this was frivolous spending with people starving, it actually did a lot of good. For starters, the church got lucky and paid people to paint, leading to a massive upgrade in painting quality from the Dark Ages and some notable painters such as Da Vinci and Picasso working for them. They also started educating people more. These now educated people with nothing to distract them, remember this was before the invention of Netflix, started thinking up a lot of new stuff, like a machine to make books faster instead of having some poor monk write it out by hand. I say a monk because at the start of the Renaissance only people in the church could read and write. However, with the new focus on education, more people could and did read books. With more thinking came even more great things like democracy and stained glass windows. So shiny. Anyways, these smart people actually started to realize some things that the church would rather they didn't, leading to the next unit, Unit 8, Reformation. Now pre-Renaissance the Catholic Church was the only people who could read the Bible due to the Bible being in Latin. They were the only ones who could read the Bible. Now having a large population believe anything you say is in a book that holds their key to salvation is pretty useful, and the church started to use it in some pretty evil ways. They invented this thing called indulgences, which were meant to lessen one's time in purgatory, the time between death and having your fate decided. Now these were originally not bad, being gained mostly by doing good works. However, some sneaky son of a Bible started saying people could pay for indulgences. This dude called Johann Tetzel was said to be able to make a woman take money she would have paid for bread for her starving child instead buy an indulgence. The idea was that if you cared for someone, you would buy an indulgence for them when they passed away in hopes they would reach heaven faster. Now this dude called Martin Luther, originally a lawyer, turned monk when he thought God saved him from a lightning storm he thought he was going to die in. However, upon joining the church he saw the corruption and wasn't gonna stand for it. He hated what the church was doing to people, so he posted a paper on his church door called the 95 Theses. Now this was pretty much him executing himself, and he knew this and ran. While he was on the run though, he translated the Bible into English and started spreading it. Eventually, in many areas, both Catholics and people who broke off from the Catholic Church were allowed. Unit 9, Scientific Revolution. Now that the Reformation has happened, faith slowly became a smaller part of people's lives, allowing them not to be killed, thrown out for working in science. Well, a little less so at least. Nicolaus Copernicus was the inventor of the heliocentric theory, the idea that the sun, not the earth, was the center of the galaxy. Some people got angry because the church said the earth was the center. Soon, more and more people supported it, like Galileo, who also invented the telescope, and Johannes Kepler, who updated the theory to ellipses instead of perfect circles. This age also involved a bunch of miscellaneous stuff: chemistry, Robert Boyle, a good enough microscope to see cells, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, the idea of gravity, Isaac Newton, and the scientific method, Francis Bacon and René Descartes. Unit 10, Columbian Exchange. When Columbus traveled to the New World, there was suddenly stuff that both of the lands had seen before. On the European side of things, they had never seen cacao beans, vanilla, tobacco, syphilis, or the dangerous potato fungus. The people of the New World were suddenly exposed to new stuff as well, such as smallpox, measles, plague, influenza, and so many more diseases. The New World also got horses, crop-ruining hogs, and lettuce. They clearly got the bad side of the deal. But seriously, a lot of people died because of the new diseases, so yeah, the New World really did get the bad side of the deal. Unit 11, Enlightenment. This unit has a lot of names, all associated with one or two words. Hobbes, Leviathan, strong government, humans inherently bad. Locke, natural rights, humans inherently blank. Montesquieu, separation of powers, popular in America. Voltaire, free speech, kicked out of France, no organized religion, alone was okay. Rousseau, morals. Mary Wollstonecraft, women's equality, vindication of the rights of women. Smith, money money money. Malthus, population, no charity. Unit 12, French Revolution. Thanks to people like Montesquieu, people in France started to realize that their government, a monarchy, wasn't all that good. Their society was split into three classes of estates. The first estate was church and highest monarchy. The second was nobles and high government officials. The third estate was everyone else, over 90% of the population. The estates were not equal, the first and second estate being the richest by far, and not paying any taxes. The third estate was mostly poor, but had a small higher class called the bourgeoisie, who were the skilled craftsmen and lawyers. They were some of the most mad, because they paid the most taxes even though the first and second estates had way more money. On top of this, the lower part of the third class couldn't feed themselves, so paying taxes was a bit of a problem. All these factors caused the French people to revolt, storming the Bastille, a French prison, in the attempt to arm themselves and revolt. Unfortunately for them, there were no weapons there. However, they got together the leaders from among them and formed a group called the National Assembly. They made an oath called the Tennis Court Oath to make a new constitution. They succeeded and set up a government called a restricted monarchy, in which the king was still in power but was weakened. However, a bit later the people got restless again, shifting into a phase called the radical phase. In this, a group called the Sans-Culottes wanted the king dead and a complete republic to be in place. A leader among them was a guy named Maximilien Robespierre, who did just that. The next several years were what later became known as the Reign of Terror, in which Robespierre beheaded lots of people. The guillotine was perfected in this period and became a symbol of terror. Soon though, the French people got fed up with the Reign of Terror, and executed Robespierre. They set up a new government again called the Directory, but they were very weak. Due to this, they called in a guy called Napoleon Bonaparte, to help them lead. Funnily enough, he soon pretty much threw out the Directory and took over control completely. He strengthened France a lot and took over a ton of new land. However, when he tried to take over Russia, they outplanned him. They used a strategy called the scorched earth policy, in which they retreated and burned everything behind them. Napoleon's army of 600,000 was left with no food to eat in the middle of Russian winter. Only 20,000 made it back, and Napoleon was exiled. The rest of Europe didn't want their people to revolt as well, so they set a monarchy back up in France to prevent that. Shortly after that, the world ended, meaning there is nothing more to review. All that was left was a sentient computer creature. Just kidding, there's more. Just not on the exam. Bye.